Glorious, precious root Guru, please sit above my crown on a lotus moon seat. Care for me with great kindness and grant the cities of body, speech, and mind. In the Dharma expanse palace of Akanishtas, the essence of all Buddhas of the three times who shows me directly my mind is Dharmakaya. I prostrate to the glorious exalted Guru. Please bless me and all beings that our minds become the Dharma. Please bless us that the Dharma become the path. Please bless us that the path dispel confusion. Please bless us that confusion arise as wisdom. And so now when we begin, the first thing, as Thrangu Rinpoche always used to say when he taught, he always talked about at the beginning about how important it is to have a good motivation. So please listen with a good motivation, a kind heart, a good wish. The best motivation is the motivation of bodhicitta, of course, but even just the wish to bring yourself and others benefit now is a good motivation. So please listen with as good a motivation as you can. So, over many years I had the wonderful opportunity to translate for Khenpo David Rinpoche on many occasions. And in almost every teaching that Rinpoche said, probably every teaching, but I just don't want to make it too definite right now. Maybe there's one or two exceptions, possibly. But in almost every teaching, he would talk about the importance of faith and devotion. He would continually say at the beginning, like when he always started the teachings with the Vajradhara lineage prayer, and he would often say, please chant with great faith and devotion in the root and lineage gurus. And so, if we really want to understand what he meant, we have to understand, well, what does he mean by faith and devotion? Also, when we say faith and devotion, as Westerners in particular, we have different ideas about what they mean. Faith in Buddhism and faith in Western culture are a little bit different. For example, when you think about in Christianity, they talk about the importance of faith. But in Christianity, what the importance of faith means is basically, we can't prove any of this, but we still believe anyways. And so it's like, there's no proof, but we believe. We have strong faith. And that strong faith helps them practice, but it's like it's based on, what is it based on? That's different than Buddhist faith. And because in Christianity there's a sense of having to believe in something that there's no proof for, often in Western secular circles we also think of faith as being kind of not so good, as having no basis, as just a sign of lacking any evidence or lacking any basis for what you say. So faith in many circles is either understood in the Christian way or thought of as something that's actually not so good. And then when we think about devotion, the idea that you are devoted to a guru, well, it sounds a little bit like you're talking about a cult. In fact, often, especially in older texts, people would talk about Tibetan Buddhism as Lamaism, worshipping the lamas. But that's not really what we mean by devotion. It's not really what we mean by faith either. So we need to understand, when we talk about faith in a Buddhist perspective, what are we talking about? When we talk about devotion, what do we mean? So generally when we talk about faith, what we really mean by faith, if you look at the definitions or the descriptions of it that are given in the sutras and then later in the Abhidharma, it's like there's a clarity of mind, this really clear, sincere aspect of mind, this feeling of just really sincere. That's faith. That's what it is. But when we talk about faith, there are actually three different types of faith. We call these faiths sincere faith, the faith of conviction, and the faith of longing. So sincere faith is that first step, just like that feeling really, wow. Like so something really moves you for some reason. There is some clarity that comes to your mind. You see something good, something worthwhile, and you feel faith. Rinpoche would often give the traditional example of like a little baby walking, or a young child, a toddler walking into a shrine or a temple for the first time and seeing all these magnificent things and kind of going, wow, and feeling faith. That's the first type of faith. But it's not necessarily such a big wow sort of experience either. Because sometimes, like I remember the first time that I began to really feel faith for Rinpoche, I was a new Buddhist and I had gone to a teaching of Rinpoche's. And I listened, I was interested, but I was kind of skeptical. That's one of our Western sicknesses, is skepticism. I was kind of skeptical about the whole thing. And then on the last day, they said, well, you can go over and see Rinpoche if you like, and anyone can go and see Rinpoche. And so I went. No one else had gone yet. So I went and I sat by Rinpoche, and he took my hand and he held my hand in his, and I still remember how it felt, and his soft, warm hands holding mine. And along with that physical feeling, there was also like a feeling of clarity, sincerity, like, oh, there is something here. There is something going on here. So that, part of that feeling of that sincere feeling, but that's like a feeling of faith, sincere faith. A kind of a simple beginning thing. It's not anything magical. It's nothing that you don't have to believe. It's like you say, oh, there's something going on. Yes, there's something there. There's sincerity in your mind. And then the second type of faith is the faith of conviction. The faith of conviction means that you listen to the teachings, you contemplate them, you put them into practice, and then you begin to see that either you see in your life or in your practice that, oh, this works. Or you think about it and you use your logic and you say, yes, this must be true. And that's like the faith of conviction. It's like you believe it. And it's not believing it because you don't have a basis. It's the opposite of this. It's the faith of believing because you know. It's what we call faith from knowing. You know. You've had the experience. Maybe what happens is you go to a Dharma center or a Thrangu center, whatever Dharma center you go, and you do some meditation. And at first you think, maybe, maybe not. And then you sit down and you do a bit of meditation. And you do it for a while and you feel the benefit in your life. And so you say, I know that this is good. I know this is beneficial. That's faith from knowing. It's not anything magical. It's just like this. You build your knowledge. You gain conviction through your experience and through your logic, through your reasoning, through your thinking, through your study. And because of all that, then you begin to feel like you have faith. And this comes in stages. I think especially for us Westerners who come from a non-Buddhist culture. I remember thinking in the first couple of years that I was a Buddhist that there are things that I know are true. I know that meditation is helpful. These teachings on emptiness and suffering and so forth, they make sense, but I'm not sure about karma and rebirth yet. I'm not sure about them. So it took a while for me to get to the point where I could actually say, yeah, this is something that I am sure about. This is the logic that was taught. I've thought about the logic. This is my experience. And I think that it must be. I can't find any other explanation. I really think this must be it. And so gradually it takes time. It builds over time. So at first, you have to have a little bit of suspend judgment for a while. You have to be willing to say, I don't know about this yet, but give it the benefit of the doubt. Really, we talk about there being two different types of doubt. There's doubt that tends towards the truth, and there's the doubt that tends towards the untruth. So if you suspend judgment and say, let's see what evidence comes up, then you're tending towards the truth. That's a good kind of doubt. It's like encourages you to examine and think. Look at your experience. Use your brain. Use your mind and intelligence, and come and see for yourself. And then when you finally do see something for yourself, then you have a really strong faith in it. You know, this is true. That's what we mean by the faith of conviction. And then the third type of faith is a faith of longing. And so longing is like you have that sincere feeling, you have that conviction, then you think, I want to be like that. For example, you might think you had a lot of teachings from Thrangu Rinpoche, or any other master, of course. If you haven't had teachings from Rinpoche, you've had teachings and you think, I've heard about the qualities of the Buddha. I see the qualities of Rinpoche or these masters, and I want to become like this too. I want to be able to do this myself. So this is the faith from longing. It's thinking, I really want to be able to be like this myself. I can do it. Rinpoche's taught me. He's showed me what I need to do. And so I want to do this. I want to be like this. So I want to be just like Rinpoche. That's like a thought of faith. That's the faith of longing. I want to be just like the Buddha. I want to become a Buddha. I want to have all of the qualities of a Buddha. And because we have the faith that from knowing that comes from our experience in following the path and our study, we know that it's possible to do this. We know that it's possible to develop the same qualities as Rinpoche developed. It's possible to develop all the qualities of a Buddha because we can do the same thing. They teach us simple steps that we can follow, and you go by them one by one step to the next, and if you're dedicated about it, then you achieve the result. And so you know that. And so you have that longing that you want to do it. That's the faith from longing. So again, it's nothing magical. It's not some baseless thing. There's no suspension of disbelief. There's nothing about that. It's instead looking at the nature and saying, I can do this and I want to do it. So faith in this way, in Buddhism, it's really based on our experience, on our intelligence, on using our brains. So it's what we call faith from knowing, as I said before. It's very different from what we talk about as blind faith. Now, a lot of people, especially people from traditionally Buddhist cultures, have blind faith in Buddhism, and it's very important. It's very good. It's very helpful when you see Tibetans who have really strong faith and can, because of their strong faith that maybe didn't have a basis to begin with, later as they do more practice, they gain a basis and they develop it. So having blind faith at the beginning is not at all a problem. As long as you keep working and using your intelligence, and looking at your experience and seeing how it is, following the instructions, then the blind faith can turn into the faith from knowing. But for us from Western cultures, that's a little bit less common. So we start from examining and looking and trying and seeing how it works, seeing what it does. But when we do that, there's a danger because in our Western culture, we tend to be really skeptical about things. We tend to really pick things apart, and we also want to say, well, I like this, I don't like that. Take this bit, don't take that bit. For example, like when I was speaking about the faith from knowing, and I was speaking about the example of, my own example of at the beginning saying, these teachings are good, but I'm not sure about the teachings on karma and rebirth. You might be tempted to say, no, I don't want those teachings on that. They don't work for me. I want these other teachings. And then you take some teachings from somewhere else and you put it all together in some sort of a pastiche. But really, when you do that, you're not ever going to be able to get beyond your own ignorance. If you knew how to choose which teachings to follow, you would already be a Buddha. And if you are not already a Buddha, then how can you choose? So you have to really, it's really important not to discard the things, not to accept them immediately, but to use your own experience and judgment to see what you think and how it works. And it may take a while. It may take a while to come to conviction. Then as you have faith, then devotion naturally develops out of faith, especially when you have a connection to a teacher like Rinpoche. So like you see Rinpoche and you see the example that he gave over all those years that he devoted himself entirely. Now most of us, we've only seen him in really the latter half of his life, especially English speakers or Westerners or people or foreigners. You know, we only saw Rinpoche after he started traveling to Asia and the West in the late 70s. So we didn't really have experience, although of course there are some Tibetans and other people who met Rinpoche earlier than that, but for a lot of us, we only know him for the period of the time that we've been in contact with him. But even in that time, we can look and see, well, what did Rinpoche do? I mean, maybe you met Rinpoche in the 1980s, or maybe the 90s, or the 2000s, but just when you think about what he did, coming from Tibet with almost nothing, serving the Gyaltsen Karmapa selflessly for 17 or 18 years at Rimtek Monastery, then establishing his own monastery here and retreat center here in Namo Buddha and in Nepal, working tirelessly to build this great monastery at the same time as he was spending many months every year traveling abroad, giving teachings. And the reason why Rinpoche traveled abroad, I mean, there were a couple of reasons. One was to help support all his activity. But another really important reason, if you read what Rinpoche said, is people abroad really wanted the Dharma. He would travel to the West, and there would be people who would be so excited to have Dharma teachings, who would take such great interest and really work at the teachings. And so Rinpoche traveled, and he saw that, and he came to our lands. He came to the United States, and so I, by accident, had the opportunity to meet Rinpoche and to see what he did, and then later to follow his advice, do his teachings, and eventually become his translator and serve him, and to see what he did. The effort that Rinpoche put in for so many years on all of our behalves. It doesn't matter where in the world you're from, because Rinpoche basically traveled from the northernmost points of the world to the southernmost points. He traveled from places on the north like Sweden and down to the south in Chile and New Zealand and every continent. And so he traveled everywhere to give us the Dharma. And so when you see the example of someone like that, you feel real gratitude for what they're doing for you on just a basic level. They're coming and they're giving you teachings that if you follow, they help. And because they help, then you naturally feel devotion. And devotion grows. Now, sometimes Rinpoche would give advice that you don't like, and there were many times when Rinpoche gave advice that I didn't like. Or I shouldn't say advice, I should say instructions. Of course, Rinpoche was always very polite about it. Wouldn't it be good if you did something? But sometimes I didn't want to do it. But then when I did it, sometimes with a bit of resistance inside of myself, I have to be, quite honest about that. I resist it, but I did it anyways. And then I saw what happened because of it. I saw the benefit that came from it. And when you see that, Rinpoche is pushing, and when I see that Rinpoche is pushing me out of my comfort zone to do something that I didn't think I could do or that would be worthwhile doing, and then to see that it actually had great benefit, then that makes me feel like, oh, there's even more there. That's devotion. So devotion gradually grows. I mean, you read in the texts about, Milarepa feeling, his crying when he thinks of Marpa, or you read texts about people saying that you should get goosebumps when you think of your guru. Well, that doesn't happen right away. But that doesn't mean that you don't have devotion. What it means is that your devotion is growing. And eventually it'll get to the point where when you think of your guru, it's hard not to just feel inside of yourself that really strong feeling of devotion. That feeling of devotion, you have to distinguish that from the kind of, what do we say, the affect, the feelings from the actual devotion. I mean, it's not the feeling like you're going to cry, it's not devotion. What devotion really is if we look at what the word in Tibetan is, it's mogu. Murpa, often we've translated that as interest, but it's more than interest. I got corrected in a teaching once by the Karmapa, in the middle in front of everyone on a live broadcast. He corrected me and said, it's not interest, it's longing. Another way, if you look at it, thinking about it, is it's a quality of resolve. If you look at the Sanskrit word, it's like resolve. So you've got longing or resolve. You know there's something you want to do. You want to be like Rinpoche. You have that resolve. I'm going to do it. That's a really important part of devotion. So devotion is kind of like a little bit of commitment because it comes from that resolve. Then the second part is gupa, which we often translate as respect, but the Karmapa also corrected me on this one. It means dedication. I'm going to dedicate myself to doing that. I'm going to work hard at it. I'm going to apply to myself. So you've got the resolve or the longing that you really want to do this. And then you've got the dedication that you're going to be like, that you're going to do it. And so when we feel dedication to Rinpoche, when we feel devotion for Rinpoche, what are we feeling devotion for? We're feeling devotion for not just the person, but for his teachings and what he's told us to do. This idea, I can do what Rinpoche is telling me to do. I want to do it. I know it's going to bring great benefit. And I need to do it. I feel like I have to dedicate myself to do it. So there's like this commitment that naturally arises as your devotion goes stronger and stronger. So it doesn't start out like full-fledged devotion. I mean, it starts out as something kind of smaller, and it grows over time. But it gradually grows. And as devotion increases, then, of course, at times it feels stronger, or worse. But really, it's not the feeling. It's not whether you You get tears in your eyes when you think of Rinpoche. That might happen, but it might not. And that's not what is important. What's important is that feeling like, I have to do this. I have to fulfill Rinpoche's wishes. I have to do what he could. Rinpoche gave me so many precious teachings in this lifetime. I have to do everything I can to put them into effect in this lifetime because I don't know what's going to happen in my next one. I need to do it now. I need to do everything I can to fulfill Rinpoche's wishes. So even if you don't feel any particular emotion with it, if you have that commitment, that resolve, and that dedication, that's devotion, and that's what you need. And so this is really important. So these are really two important qualities, and they're not like some cult quality. They're not the faith and devotion like you're in some cult. It's not suspending disbelief. It's using your brain, looking at your experience, and seeing what's possible, and then believing when someone tells you that more is possible than you thought, and trying your hardest to do it. So I think that is all I really have to say to you today. So thank you all very much for listening. And so now let's please dedicate this merit. By this merit may we attain omniscience, defeat the enemy, wrongdoing and free, all wanderers from the ocean of existence, churned by great waves of birth, age, sickness, and death. Thank you.